Greg Whittle, a senior employee in an ordinary, crowded workplace, knows his ideal life. He can imagine it perfectly: a home, a woman, a child, a town with a harbor. But he also knows that those visions are only visions, and the only thing that's real is the feeling that comes along with them. One day, while avoiding doing his job, he receives a call from his daughter, Emily. She's graduating and wants him to attend the ceremony. Greg, however, hesitates to agree since his ex-wife is also going to be there and he wants to avoid complicating things further. Greg's contradicted, and the non-stop calling of his work phone allows him to avoid answering. Then he gets summoned by his boss. Before he gets down there, he outlines a sketch of a woman with care. The job swallows him. Those sketches are the things he holds dearly. They are really important. His coworker comes inside to remind him of the summoning. He gets several callbacks as well, but it seems like Greg is doing everything to postpone it. He calls the pharmacy to get a refill of the medicine he's taking. But finally, he's told that the refill won't be possible. Finally, he takes the last of his medicine and races out the door. The assistant tells him that Bjorn, the boss, is in the toilet and he'll be back soon. Once Bjorn arrives, he cuts to the chase right away. There have been a lot of problems regarding Autobots and the company's Indian counterparts, and the responsibility lies squarely on Greg's shoulders. Therefore, he's fired. Just like that, he's fired. Greg's dumbfounded. Bjorn has to repeat it several times, but his employee seems to be completely frozen by the news. There's no reaction on his face. Finally, Bjorn approaches to comfort him, hoping it will melt the ice, but Greg suddenly leaps up. This motion is so unexpected that Bjorn falls back, hits his head on the table, and his lifeless body ends up lying on the floor. For a moment, Greg is unable to move out of desperation. He is going to be the one they blame, so he has to do something. He hides Bjorn's body behind a curtain. Soon the assistant enters, still thinking that Bjorn is in the toilet, so Greg seizes the opportunity to tell her that he'll talk to him some other time and escapes the building. There's a bar nearby, so he decides to have a drink. It's almost impossible to comprehend the recent events and what they might mean for his future. Greg's head is ringing hopelessly, so he hopes to numb it with whiskey and solitude. However, one mysterious woman, who weirdly looks like the one in his sketch, doesn't let him do that. Firstly, from afar, she tries to make him disappear with her hands. After several failed attempts, she concludes that he's real and goes to talk to him. It's evident that she has some mysterious powers, but everything that she says makes zero sense. Her name is Isabella. After introducing herself, she invites him to have a drink together. At first, Greg rejects her, but suddenly, the woman asks a rhetorical question. He needs an alibi, right? Greg understands that Isabella somehow knows what happened recently, so all he can do is join her. Once he sits down, Isabella points out the window. The lifeless man facing the gray clouds is plainly visible. So, this is how she knew. For some reason, this woman wants to help him. But his breathing is still rapid, and the delusional things that she's saying seem impossible to be true. She says that the current events are partially her fault. Therefore, she's eager to help him. The world around them isn't real. There are only 3 people in this bar who are real: herself, Greg, and her ex-boyfriend, who's currently in the bathroom. If Greg wants her to help, then he needs to go there and take a certain necklace from him. The necklace that contains yellow crystals that are crucial to controlling this fake world. This sounds exactly like the pointless mumble of a delusional person. However, Greg has nothing to lose at this point, so he goes to the bathroom and finds the boyfriend unconscious. The necklace is on him, so after he gets back, they put the crystals in their drinks and chug them down. The sky has been overcast the whole day, but out of nowhere, sunlight drifting from the window lights their table. Isabel smiles and mumbles that life is merely light bouncing from atom to atom. Something changes in the world, and before Greg can get skeptical and think that some homeless woman is playing jest on him, the window in front of Bjorn's corpse opens, and his body falls. People on the street are terrified, screaming their lungs out. Greg runs out and understands that everybody thinks it was a Isabella comes outside too. Tramping away from the action, he asks her how she did that, but Isabella replies that she knows nothing. The only thing that she saw was a man falling from the building and Greg, who was drinking in the bar at that time. This implies that she's the one controlling this event. However, other people, especially the police, don't need to know. Finally, she advises him to lay low and hide away for some time until the case is closed. Greg accidentally left his ID in the bar, and in the next scene, they sell his phone too, so that he's completely vanished from the world. Isabel leads him to a strange place. It's a complete ruin, a mishmash of things. It looks like a place where homeless people find shelter, so Greg starts having second thoughts. Why must he stay in this desolate place with this strange woman? But Isabel still manages to make him stay. She has electricity and water. She isn't homeless, she's just temporarily remote. At night, the place doesn't look half so bad. Greg aimlessly walks by a TV and discovers that the case is already closed. It has already been concluded that there has been no foul play, and so he's free to go. A stream of sudden happiness overwhelms him. He takes his jacket and announces to Isabel that he's going. He doesn't want to be rude, but the unexpected joy has a grip on his actions. Isabel asks him why he's in such a rush, and so, suddenly aware of his impoliteness, Greg stays to have a stir-fry. Now he understands that Isabel is kind of nice to hang out with. After talking about Bjorn, she shows him how to light candles with a single wave of her hand. Out of nowhere, Greg discovers that it's possible. His perception of reality starts to bend. Afterward, he's so relieved that while having dinner, he tells her about his vision of a home and shows her all the drawings depicting it. Then Greg explains to Isabel that all of this exists in his head with extreme precision. Suddenly, Isabel sees a sketch of a woman. It's practically her. The woman Greg drew looks exactly like Isabel. It can't be a coincidence. And the world he's depicting isn't a dream or a fantasy. It's a real world outside of this fake one. And Greg can feel it. He's attached to it with strange invisible strings. Isabel explains it all to him, saying that out there, in the real world, they are meant for each other. This is all too much to fully comprehend for Greg. However, the things that she says are beyond anything he has ever heard, and they weirdly make sense. Believing that it's all true, Greg leans toward her, getting closer and closer until their lips touch. In the next scene, we see Emily, Greg's daughter, visiting her brother Arthur. She wants to find their father and make him come to her graduation. But Arthur urges her to forget about Greg, just like their mother did. It seems like he's not quite fond of his father. And so, Emily tries to make him remember all the good things Greg did for him. But Arthur remains reluctant. He won't go out in search of him. Greg must have done something dreadful to deserve this kind of attitude from his son. In the meantime, Greg and Isabel are having a great time, abusing their control over the fake world and all its inhabitants. While skating, they consume a few of their crystals and pick their prey, making them stumble, fall, or go over the counter. They make a terrible mess, both on the skating floor and in the bathroom, while soothing their passion. Finally, Greg can forget about yesterday and leave the feeling of overwhelming guilt behind. Nothing is real, and therefore, the fact that Bjorn died because of him has no meaning either. Afterward, they change their outfits in a nearby store. Once they get back into the street, Greg sees something very unusual. The street in front of the skating center is crowded with police. From the building, they drag out individuals and put them in their cars. Once they drive by, Greg notices that both of the imprisoned look exactly like him and his companion. Suddenly, our point of view also changes, and we see Greg, stained and filthy, sitting in the police car and looking at two weirdly clothed people looking at him from the street. Could it be that all the talk about controlling the fake environment was only real inside his delusional head? And so they get arrested. Once they are free again, Greg, who seems to be weirdly energetic and joyful, shows Isabel the empty neck. The crystals are no longer there, but Isabel pays no mind to them. She says that it's all right, and they go to have lunch. Meanwhile, Emily is looking for her father. Nobody seems to have seen him. Later that afternoon, Isabel sees two streetwalkers talking to someone in a car and tells Greg to get some food alone and meet her outside. She has to do something. Before Greg enters the restaurant, he sees Isabel leaning over the car window like the two other prostitutes, but he pays her no mind. After he orders his food, the cashier tells Greg the price he cannot pay, so Greg turns back to get more cash from Isabel. Unexpectedly, from the window, he sees her getting in the car with a stranger and driving off. Greg is confused. He doesn't know how to get out of this situation, so he comes up with an excuse to leave this place without making it obvious that he's homeless. We then see Arthur sitting in the corner with his friends, looking at his father as a complete disgrace. In the next scene, it's already evening, and Greg is sitting outside the restaurant, waiting for Isabel. The cashier, who understood that Greg had no money, came out with expired food and gave it to him. As Greg starts eating, Isabel appears from the corner with a gloomy expression on her face. Greg isn't mad at her, and after they share the cold food, Isabel takes him to a dark and shady street where she usually gets her yellow crystals. She goes into the building alone, walks up the stairs jammed with and enters a room. A man named Kendo, who's also real, prepares the crystals for her while Greg waits outside. Suddenly, a taxi approaches him, and he sees Emily getting out of it. It seems like Arthur told her about today's little incident. Greg seems to be completely unaware of how he looks, while Emily urges him to follow her. Of course, Greg is going to join her, however, he has to wait for somebody first. Isabel sees all of this from the window and hurries Kendo while Greg starts talking about how, after Emily's graduation, he wants to take the whole family on a vacation. He's unable to notice the sorrowful expression on Emily's face. It hurts to see her father like this, delusional and completely out of hand. She tells him that graduation has already passed a long time ago. This news hits hard. Greg gets quiet. Sadness and guilt overwhelm him. There's so much inside his head he wishes she could see. When Emily sees Greg's expression, she thinks of only one solution. Before she slowly walks off, she reassures him that it's all right and gives him her picture and her number. He can call whenever he's ready. When Isabel comes back, she urges him to stop being so emotional about his fake daughter. She's not real, and the feelings that she brings aren't substantial either. But this time Greg is reluctant. He even rejects her offer to take the crystals. It's tougher not to have any special abilities, but that is the kind of life he prefers right now. However, soon the circumstances get dirty. A car starts following them, threatening them, so Greg finally yields, takes several crystals, and bends the car with his telekinetic powers. The amount of crystal he took, however, proved to be too much. Suddenly, he gets ill and loses consciousness. When he wakes up, he finds himself back in Isabel's place. He calls for her, walking around the area, but there is no answer, so he gathers all his things and walks off, deciding to call Emily. There is no answer from Emily either, so he walks back to the only place he thinks he belongs now and finds Isabel inadequately agitated. She bolts toward him right away, shouts at him, and scolds him for going off without notice. It seems like she has gotten emotionally attached to Greg already. Then she wails about the fact that their crystals are missing and the drawing of their house. Somebody must have surely stolen them away. But Greg assures her that the drawings are with him. Suddenly, Isabel gets suspicious. In her mind, this means their separation. It means that Greg was planning to leave. Soon, she notices Emily's picture and number in his heart pocket. This is the last piece of information Isabel needs to finally conclude that she's gradually missing Greg. The man is getting dragged back into the illusory reality, and thanks to the bonds they've created, he's about to drag her with him. This sparks the first disagreement between them. Greg is not so sure about the talk of reality. There is zero substantial evidence that proves she's talking the truth. So the only thing Greg has to lean on is Isabel's word, and let's be real, she doesn't seem quite trustworthy from the outside. Those final words from Greg make it clear to Isabel that she has to prove it to him some other way. Fortunately, she has just the thing for that. Another crystal, stronger than yellows and much rarer, they are used to eject a person from illusory reality and show him the true depths of one's being. Unfortunately, however, there's not enough for both of them, but they will have to take their chances. Greg is a little concerned about their safety, and Isabel doesn't give him false hopes that the crystals are completely safe to use, but he still takes a deep breath and takes them. He wakes up in the real world and gradually learns the truth. He's plugged into a huge device with other volunteers, including Isabel. She disconnects herself and stands up. She acts completely differently and tells Dr. Liam why they are in a fake world. Just like her, Greg is also addressed as Doctor. After he's plugged out of the device, Isabel takes him to lunch. Before Greg follows her, he sees the picture of his daughter on one of the computers. She's addressed as FGT. Then he and Isabel change into new clothes and go out. Greg treads lightly in the real world. He's overwhelmed and taken aback by the atmosphere full of holograms. One of them even talks to Isabel, asking if there's any problem regarding the research project. But there are none. Greg wonders why he doesn't remember any of it, but it seems like his memories will gradually come to him. However, the clean streets, the sea, the holograms, nothing amazes him as much as the home that Isabel shows him in the distance. It's his home, just like he would imagine it. He's dumbfounded. All he ever dreamed of is here. And so, while back in the other world, his daughter continues searching for her father, Greg, and Isabel spends the whole day in their home. By the time the evening comes, Greg is so astonished by all of this that he can't contain his emotions. He's eager to understand how this world came to be, but his memories are not even close. After hearing this, Isabel gets a little frustrated. It might be her fault. They exited the fake world in a rush and with inadequate dosage. But for Greg, not knowing isn't so bad. He's rediscovering this place, and it's much better this way. He even keeps discovering new things about himself. It seems like he's the inventor of the thought visualizer. It is a device that illustrates your outspoken thoughts. And with that device, Isabel explains to him how this world came to be. It seems like the world used to be worse than the fake one they generated. But synthetic biology, asteroid mining, and automatization changed everything. Now they're in a magnificent world where people can focus on art and science while their basic needs are carefully tended to. However, the strangest thing is how quickly humans tend to get used to even the best of their lives. And this is why their science project started, so that people can be grateful and happy again, just like Greg is right now. And so that they are allowed to appreciate bad things too. Now they have to go back. Isabel urges him to leave, but Greg is reluctant. He has tasted happiness and wants another piece. Finally, he convinces Isabel to stay for another day. A yacht, swimming, ocean, champagne, observatory, popularity, and respect. There's a party twice a month in which the artists and the scientists get together, and one of them is today. Greg is fulfilled. A giant smile has domesticated his face. When the evening comes, one of the scientists catches him alone and seems weirdly happy about it. With a hissing voice, he whispers to him that the word is out that Isabel's research is having some problems. The scientist hopes to get some information regarding those problems from Dr. Whittle. Naturally, Greg knows nothing about it. When the scientist leaves, saying that they all believe in Isabel and want her to succeed, Isabel notices that Greg is standing awkwardly. Right away, she knows what has happened. She knows that, in truth, everybody here wants her to fail. No one here believes in what she's trying to accomplish. She causes a scene, drawing the whole room's attention. But finally, Greg calms her down. He has faith in her and in everything that she's trying to accomplish. Moving forward, they make their way elsewhere, and suddenly we see someone who wasn't expected at this party. It's Emily in the form of a hologram. She's looking at her father from atop, while another hologram advises her to keep away from Greg since he can be unpredictable. It's unknown how she came to be here, but we've gotten no explanation yet. The next morning, after dreaming of the fake world he used to inhabit, Greg wakes up and goes for a swim. Isabel is already there, worrying about her reputation and restless to go back inside the brain box to finish one full cycle of life and collect more data for her project. Greg, however, has no intention of going back into that dreadful place, and he tells her so. He also tells Isabel that she has already collected enough data. She only wants to go back to soothe her frustration and fear of rejection from the other scientists. And so, Greg convinces her to stay, go out, and present her project to a wide audience. In the next scene, Isabel is standing on a huge stage in front of a crowd full of scientists and artists. She starts by presenting the main idea of her project. In her mind, humans are unable to truly feel bliss until they experience both sides of a coin. Without its opposite, everything loses its meaning. By making it possible for people to experience a dreadful life, Isabel will allow people in the new world to feel bliss once more. And here is her evidence. She calls Greg to come onto the stage. As they both take their seats, Isabel reveals that before Dr. Whittle got plugged into the brain box, he was asked a series of questions. Now she is going to ask the same questions once more, and the whole audience will see the difference. Compared to the previous cynical Greg that gradually appeared on the huge screen behind them, the one on the stage seems fulfilled, happy, and at peace. However, the only crack is visible when Isabel asks him if anything is missing in his current life. The hologram of her daughter suddenly appears in the middle of the audience. Emily, this is what he lacks, and he knows it. For a moment, Greg is silent, reflecting on his current mindset. Finally, when the vision fades, he has returned to his senses, and he lies and says that there is nothing he lacks. After the wave of applause flies over the audience, all the scientists who once doubted Isabel now gather around her, full of respect. Greg sees Emily once more and follows her. It seems like her hologram can hear him and talk to him. For a moment, as Isabel starts to get swarmed by the congratulations, everything fades away except the vision of his daughter around Greg. He asks Emily whether she's real or not and how she got here. Now he sounds like a delusional person who thinks that he's somewhere else in the perfect world, while in reality, he's standing in his tent, homeless and filthy, talking to his desperate daughter. Emily gives him the yellow crystals that she found in the tent, and to find her father inside this shell of a man, she tells him about the memory they once had. And this memory seems just as real and joyful as anything in the so-called real world. Now he is stuck between two worlds, and he has to choose which one he believes in. Suddenly, reality starts to break, and from the cracks, the fake world starts to spill out. The party gradually turns into a protest, and the scientists become homeless men. The hologram of Emily fades away, and Greg starts looking for Isabel, who's in the middle of the chaos. Whittle is unable to reach her, and suddenly he knows what he should do. He takes one of the yellow crystals and telekinetically splits the swarm of people in half, allowing Isabel to walk freely. Isabel is desperate. She knows the truth of the events. They took the wrong amount of the blue crystals, and as a result, they brought the fake world with them. Now they most certainly must go back to make it right. They need to take 10 crystals each to put an end to this outrage. They rush through the mixture of two worlds, enter their lab hurriedly, quickly plug themselves into the brain box, and plunge themselves into the fake world once more. Once they wake up in the tent, they go in search of Kendo. Inside the bar, in front of Greg's old fake job, they turn to violence, asking where Kendo is. Suddenly, Greg sees Bjorn outside the building and bolts toward him. Chaos breaks out as he arrives there, trying to assure the police and Bjorn himself that he shouldn't be out here, walking around as if he hasn't fallen from the window. Then Isabel comes after him and pushes him out of there. Greg is acting weirdly. How can he get so emotional when he knows that Bjorn is a fake-generated person? Isabel explains it to him anxiously and adds that she found Kendo. What they need now is a car. To acquire it, Isabel gets pepper spray from one of the streetwalkers, gets into the car of one of the potential clients, and uses it on him. Greg is nearby. Once he catches the man off guard, he pushes him out of his car and takes his place. Inside the car, Isabel finds a revolver. And so, now they have both, the car to get to Kendo and the gun to deal with him. In the next scene, they arrive at the building where Kendo is. Right away, as Isabel catches a glimpse of him, she points the gun at him and demands the blue crystals. Kendo tries to calm her down, takes his hand behind his back to take out the crystals, and is immediately shot several times. Isabel quickly gets to him and discovers that Kendo went for the crystals and not a secret gun. But she's not so worried about his death. Even though Kendo is dead in the fake world, he's still fine in the real one. Greg, however, doesn't share this unusually relaxed attitude. He feels as if Isabel is making it all up, but before they can argue about it, the police come, and they run toward the ceiling. Running across the top of the building, Greg reassures himself that this is all fake. He's scared. They get down with the fire escape, make their way toward the stolen car, and drive. Meanwhile, Emily gets a call and is informed about her father's recent activities. She runs to her brother and asks him to join her. Back in the tents, Greg and Isabel discover that they only have 11 blue crystals. The police have them surrounded. This is it. They are doomed. Isabel gets desperate, saying that only one of them can return to the real world, while another will have to spend the rest of his life in jail inside this dreadful simulation. Courage leaves Greg. He starts thinking only about himself, repeating on and on that he can't stay here. The perfect world was too sweet and dear for him. And so Isabel prepares the crystals and hands them to him. Seeing Isabel sacrifice herself makes Greg reconsider his behavior. Suddenly, the perfect solution comes to him. He urges Isabel to kill him, just like she killed Kendo and took the crystals herself. This way, they will both soon wake up in the real world. But now Isabel reveals that she's not sure whether Greg will truly wake up or not. She's not sure of anything anymore. This project of hers is far from perfect. She's the one who created this terrible place. It's all her fault. Suddenly, however, seeing Isabel drowning in self-loathing, Greg realizes something. This dreadfulness is what makes this place worth leaving. That is the point of this world, never knowing where you will end up or what sort of trouble will present itself any minute. Greg finally understands that he has no intention of leaving this place. He loves the sense of danger and that this word implies. After he says this very passionately, he hears the desperate voice of his daughter calling from a distance. Emily has arrived there, but the police won't let her get to her father. They took her immediately. Down in the shelter, Isabel sees that Greg means everything he's saying. She knows what she needs to do. She hands him the picture of Emily, takes the device, urges him to run away, and gets out into the open, drawing the whole attention of the police to herself and allowing Greg to escape. And just before the police can take her, she injects the blue crystals. We don't see how her story ends. We follow Greg as he runs away, feeling more alive than ever. Having seen the perfect world, he can finally appreciate the bad one. Eventually, he reaches a rehab center and gets inside. In the following scene, he's at a group session. He is told that he can say anything that is on his mind. It's a safe space, free from any stigma. For a while, words got stuck in Greg's throat, but finally, they broke free. He takes out the picture of Emily, saying that this woman insists she's his daughter, and he believes her. He believes that this world is just as real as the one where his soulmate is in a perfect house. And in the final scene, holding a bouquet, Greg walks up to Emily, his daughter, and embraces her firmly. And the hug makes him realize that the sense of reality comes along with the sense of meaning. And the world in which he is living now is more meaningful than ever.